The twin suns of the colony world, Tareth 4, painted the sky in soft orange and gold. It was a peaceful planet on the edge of human and alien space, a place where life moved slowly, and the air always carried the smell of warm soil and blooming flowers. Ethan Cole lived in a small house near the colony's starport. He worked as a mechanic, repairing shuttle engines, cargo haulers, and sometimes the odd alien transport. His hands were always a little dirty with oil, and his clothes were plain and practical. Most people saw him as calm, polite, and ordinary. 2. His wife, Princess Leora of the Shalvaran Empire, he was puzzling. When she married him, she had expected a man who wanted to show off his importance. After all, their union had been arranged by the Human Council and the Shalvaran High Court to bring peace between their people. She had assumed Ethan would try to impress her, boast about his skills, or seek influence through her royal status. Instead, he lived simply. He never spoke of politics. He never demanded luxuries. Most days, he was in the workshop fixing small ships, then came home to cook dinner or quietly read a book. Leora often wondered if the Human Council had chosen the wrong man for such an important alliance. One evening, Leora stood by the balcony of their home, her long silver hair moving in the soft wind. She looked down at the starport where Ethan was tightening bolts on a cargo shuttle. He works like a common laborer, she thought to herself. Does he not realize he is married to a princess of the Shalvaran Empire? Her thoughts were interrupted by a sudden chime from her personal communicator. She lifted it and saw a message marked Urgent from the Imperial Palace. The voice of her brother, Crown Prince Vael, came through at once. Leora, the border is under attack. Pirate fleets have raided 3 worlds. Father requests your presence immediately. Leora's calm expression hardened. The Shalvaran Empire prided itself on strong defenses, but pirates attacking so deep into their territory was troubling. I will depart at once, she replied firmly. That night, she told Ethan about the message. He listened silently, his blue-gray eyes fixed on hers. I'm coming with you, he said simply. Leora raised an eyebrow. This is imperial business, Ethan. The journey will be dangerous. You should remain here. Ethan shook his head. I won't stay behind if my wife is heading into trouble. I can help. She almost laughed. What could a mechanic from a frontier colony do against raiders and pirates? But something in his voice, steady, certain, made her pause. Very well, she agreed at last. But stay close to me and follow my instructions. The next morning, the Royal Diplomatic Cruiser Starwind landed at the starport. Its smooth silver hull reflected the sunlight, and its tall crew stood at attention in ceremonial uniforms. The captain, a tall Shalvaran officer with dark green skin, bowed deeply. Your Highness, Princess Leora, and Mr. Cole, he added with a hint of uncertainty. Ethan only gave a small nod. Good to meet you. They boarded the cruiser and took their seats in the main cabin. As the ship lifted from the surface, Leora looked out the window, watching Tareth 4 grow smaller. She wondered how long it would be before she saw its calm skies again. Ethan, meanwhile, seemed more interested in the ship's control panels than the view. His eyes moved across the displays, reading information without asking questions. Have you been on this class of vessel before? Leora asked curiously. Once or twice, Ethan replied without looking up. It's a good design, but the power relays are vulnerable near the rear hull. If anyone wanted to disable it, that's where they'd aim. Leora frowned. That was oddly specific. The journey into Shalvaran space was smooth at first. The Starwind cruised through the deep black void, its engines humming softly. But as they approached the 3rd warp gate, reports began coming in from the forward scouts. Pirate activity detected 2 sectors ahead, the captain announced over the intercom. They appear to be targeting diplomatic and supply vessels. Leora's expression tightened. If they are bold enough to attack Imperial ships, They are either desperate or very confident. Ethan leaned back in his seat, or both. She glanced at him, wondering how he could be so calm. Even the crew looked tense as they adjusted the ship's shields and scanned for threats. 3 hours later, the warning alarms began to blare. "Multiple warp signatures," shouted the sensor officer. "Pirate vessels incoming. They're locking onto us." The Starwind jolted as a series of blasts struck its shields. Leora gripped her seat, her mind already racing through diplomatic options. If she could convince the pirate leader of her value as a hostage, perhaps she could keep the crew safe until the Imperial Guard arrived. She rose to speak to the captain, but Ethan was already moving toward the bridge. "Mr. Cole, this is not—" Leora began, but stopped when she saw his face. His calm expression had shifted into something sharper. Focused, almost dangerous. "Captain," Ethan said, stepping beside the command chair, "reroute auxiliary power to the forward scanners. I need to know if they're using drone boarders." The captain hesitated. "How do you—" "Just do it," Ethan said firmly. Within seconds, the scanner display lit up with small moving dots. "Boarding drones detected," the officer confirmed. "Then jam their targeting feeds," Ethan instructed. "Route it through the comm array. It'll look like background noise to them." The crew moved quickly, obeying without further question. Leora watched, astonished. The man who had seemed so ordinary for months was now giving clear, precise orders, as if he had done this 100 times before. Outside the cruiser, several pirate drones swerved off course, colliding with each other or spinning into empty space. The boarding attempt faltered. The captain turned to Ethan. "Who exactly are you, Mr. Cole?" Ethan gave a small smile. "Just someone who's seen a few tricky situations." Leora's mind was spinning. She had no idea her average husband knew anything about space combat, let alone how to outthink a pirate boarding strategy in seconds. As the cruiser jumped to the next warp gate, she looked at him with new curiosity. There was more to Ethan Cole than she had ever imagined, and something told her this was only the beginning. The Starwind moved smoothly through the shimmering blue tunnel of the warp gate. Outside the viewports, streams of light curved like rivers in the void. Inside, the air was tense. The crew whispered quietly, their hands moving over the control panels. The recent pirate attack had left everyone on edge. Princess Leora sat in her seat, her posture straight, her mind busy. She replayed the last encounter over and over. She had expected to lead the negotiations if the pirates attacked. Instead, Ethan, her quiet, ordinary husband, had stepped forward and taken control without hesitation. She looked across the cabin. Ethan sat calmly, arms crossed, studying the bridge display as if it were a puzzle he had already solved. "Ethan," she said softly. He turned to her. "Yes?" "How did you know about the drones? And how to stop them?" He gave a small shrug. "I've worked on more than engines in my life. Sometimes fixing a problem means knowing what caused it. Pirates like those, I've seen their kind before." She wanted to ask more, but the warp tunnel dissolved into the starry black of normal space. The Starwind had exited the gate, and directly into danger. "Multiple vessels detected," the sensor officer shouted. "6 pirate ships, they're surrounding the gate exit." The captain's voice was steady, but urgent. "Shields to full power. Evasive pattern Delta." The Starwind twisted to the right, engines roaring as bolts of plasma lit up the darkness. 2 pirate ships moved to block their path forward. The others tightened the circle. Leora's eyes narrowed. "They were waiting for us." Ethan stepped forward again. "Captain, they'll try to disable us and take the princess alive. They won't destroy the ship, not yet." The captain glanced at him. "Suggestions?" "Don't fight in open space," Ethan said. "There's a nebula 2 million clicks east. If we get inside, their targeting systems will be half-blind." The navigation officer looked doubtful. "The nebula is unstable. Plasma storms, high radiation." "Exactly," Ethan replied. Dangerous for them, too. But we'll know how to move. They won't. The captain hesitated only a moment, then nodded. Helm! Set course for the nebula! The cruiser surged forward. The pirate ships followed like wolves chasing a lone prey animal. Leora leaned forward, her eyes fixed on the star map. As they neared the edge of the nebula, glowing clouds of gas filled the viewport. Purple and gold waves of energy shimmered like a living ocean. The first plasma storm struck almost immediately. The star wind shook, and sparks danced across one of the consoles. Keep shields balanced, Ethan called. Push power to port side emitters. They'll take the brunt of the next wave. The crew obeyed, and the ship slid deeper into the gas cloud. Visibility dropped to near zero. The pirates slowed, their formation breaking. Inside the haze, only sensor echoes and faint engine glows revealed movement. Ethan studied the readings with practiced eyes. They'll split up to flank us, he said. We'll use that. He walked to a control panel and tapped a series of commands. We can create false sensor pings. Make them think we're moving where we're not. They'll waste time chasing shadows. The captain allowed it, and moments later 3 pirate ships veered off toward ghost signals. The other 3 hesitated, unsure where their target had gone. Leora moved to stand beside Ethan. Her voice was quiet but curious. You've done this before, haven't you? He looked at her for a moment, as if deciding how much to tell her. A long time ago, before the council chose me for this marriage, I worked with crews who went to dangerous places. Sometimes we salvaged wrecks. Sometimes we made sure dangerous people didn't hurt anyone again. She studied him. You never mentioned this? I wanted a quieter life, he said simply. And I thought you'd prefer one too. A sudden alarm pulled their attention back to the battle. One pirate ship approaching fast from starboard, the sensor officer called. Rotate 30 degrees, Ethan ordered sharply. Let them think they have a clear shot. The captain followed his advice. The pirate vessel swooped in, charging weapons, only to be struck by a sudden burst of plasma lightning from the nebula. The blast tore through their shields, sending them spinning into the gas cloud. Cheers erupted on the bridge. Ethan's voice cut through. Don't celebrate yet. The others will regroup. Minutes later, the 2 remaining pirate ships tried to corner them in a narrow corridor of clear space inside the nebula. Ethan studied the map, then smiled faintly. There's a gravity pocket ahead, he said. If we time it right, we can sling past them and out of this nebula while they're still turning. The captain trusted him now without question. Helm, follow his lead. The star wind plunged forward, skimming dangerously close to the edge of the gravity well. The ship shuddered, the inertial dampeners straining, and then they shot forward like an arrow from a bow. Behind them, the pirate ships miscalculated their turns and drifted too close to the gravity pocket. Both were pulled off course, vanishing, deeper into the nebula's storms. Silence filled the bridge except for the steady hum of the engines. The captain exhaled slowly. We're clear. Leora turned to Ethan. Her voice was calm, but her eyes held something new. Respect. You didn't just help us escape. You saved the ship. Ethan gave a small shrug. Just used what I knew. But Leora could see it now. The confidence, the way he read the battle like a book, the way the crew listened to him. This was no ordinary mechanic. Hours later, as the star wind approached the Shalvaren capital system, Leora stood alone in her private chamber. She looked out at the stars, thinking of the man she had thought she understood. Her marriage had started as a political duty, but now she wondered if the Human Council had known all along who Ethan Cole really was. And deep inside, she began to feel something she had not expected. Pride. Because if her husband could outwit a pirate fleet, perhaps he could face whatever dangers lay ahead. The Shalvaran capital world, Varelia, shone like a jewel against the black of space. Its cities glittered with silver towers and floating gardens. The Starwind moved slowly toward the main docking ring, its crew still recovering from the tense journey through pirate-infested space. From the observation deck, Princess Leora gazed down at her homeworld. Relief filled her heart. She was finally back in the safety of the Imperial Palace. Ethan stood beside her, hands resting casually on the railing. "Beautiful place," he said. "It is," Leora replied, though her eyes moved to study him again. In the quiet light of the docking bay, he looked like the same man she had lived with for months. Simple clothes, calm posture. Yet she couldn't forget the way he had commanded the crew during the pirate chase. As they stepped off the cruiser, the Imperial Guard lined the corridor. Each wore shining ceremonial armor and stood perfectly still as they saluted the princess. At the far end, Crown Prince Vael, tall and commanding, stepped forward to greet them. "Leora," he said warmly, embracing her in the Shalvaran way. Then his sharp eyes turned to Ethan. "And the human husband." Ethan gave a polite nod. "Good to meet you, Your Highness." Vael looked him over for a long moment, as if trying to measure his worth in one glance. Then he turned to lead them toward the palace. Later that evening, the Imperial High Council gathered in the Grand Hall. A holographic map of the outer border shimmered in the air, red warning marks scattered across it. One counselor spoke first. "The pirates are not acting alone. Someone is supplying them with advanced weapons." Leora listened closely, her mind piecing together the details. The raids were coordinated, fast, and unusually precise. This was no random chaos. Ethan stood quietly at the back of the hall, but his eyes never left the map. Finally, Vael asked, "Can we predict their next target?" The counselors murmured uncertainly, offering guesses based on trade routes. Ethan's voice cut in from the shadows. "They'll strike at Kryden Station next." Every head turned. Vael frowned. "And how would you know that?" Ethan stepped forward. "It's the only major fuel hub within range of their current position. Take it, and they control half the supply lines to the border. Your fleet would have to waste days going around, giving them time to hit more worlds." The room fell silent. One of the counselors whispered to another, "How does he know our routes?" Vael's gaze was sharp. "That's a military-level assessment, human." Ethan shrugged. "I just look at the map." Despite his casual tone, Leora knew it was more than that. She could see the precision in his words, the way he didn't hesitate. This wasn't guessing, it was experience. Later, as they walked through the palace gardens, Leora finally confronted him. "You've been hiding something from me," she said. Ethan stopped under the glow of a silver-leafed tree. "I've been hiding a lot of things," he admitted. "Tell me," she pressed. He hesitated. "Before the marriage, I worked in deep space, not just fixing ships. I was part of a quiet program. We dealt with dangerous situations before they reached human worlds. Pirates, smugglers, sometimes worse. We learned alien tactics, studied how they thought. The council didn't want that public." Leora's breath caught. "So you were trained? Like a soldier?" "Not exactly," he said. "Soldiers fight in open battles. We worked in the shadows, making sure open battles never had to happen." Their conversation was cut short by the arrival of a palace messenger. "Your Highness," the messenger said to Leora, "urgent news. Kryden Station has sent a distress signal. They are under attack." Leora looked at Ethan. His prediction had been correct. Within minutes, the palace war room was alive with movement. Fleet commanders prepared to deploy. Vael stood at the center, issuing orders. Ethan stepped up beside him. "You can't send the main fleet straight in," he said quietly. "The pirates will have ambush ships hidden in the asteroid belt around Kryden." Vael turned sharply. "And what do you suggest, human?" "Send 2 fast corvettes ahead, dark and quiet. They can slip past the belt and jam the pirate comms before the main fleet arrives. Without coordination, their ambush falls apart. The Shalvaran commander looked doubtful. That's risky. Ethan's tone was steady. So is charging blind into a trap. In the end, Viel gave the order to follow Ethan's plan. Hours later, news came that the corvettes had successfully disrupted pirate communications. The main fleet entered the system and drove the attackers away. For the second time in a matter of days, Ethan Cole's guidance had saved Shalvaran lives. That night, Leora found Ethan on the palace balcony, looking out at the distant stars. "You knew exactly how they'd fight," she said quietly. "I've studied pirates for years," Ethan replied. "Patterns don't change much. They think speed and numbers will beat careful planning. It rarely does." She stepped closer. "You're not the man I thought I married," he smiled faintly. "I'm still me. I just don't talk about the past much." Leora realized then that she had misjudged him. The man she had once thought plain and average had a mind sharpened by years of surviving danger, and now his skill was protecting her people. For the first time, she felt not just respect, but trust. In the shadow of the palace towers, far beyond their sight, a small stealth vessel drifted in the darkness. Inside, a figure watched the palace through long-range sensors. "Confirmed," the figure said into a communicator. "The human is involved. Proceed with Phase 2. Somewhere in the depths of space, the next move against the Empire was already being prepared, and Ethan Cole would soon face a threat far greater than pirates. The palace was quiet at night, but Ethan Cole was not sleeping. He stood on the balcony outside his guest chamber, staring at the dark horizon of Virelia. Somewhere out there, he knew, the enemy was already preparing their next move. He had been in too many conflicts not to recognize the signs. The pirate attacks were only the surface. There was a bigger force directing them, a force that understood how to push the Shalvaran Empire toward instability. Princess Leora found him there, the moonlight reflecting off her silver hair. "You're awake again," she said softly. "I don't sleep well when someone's planning an attack," Ethan replied. She moved to stand beside him. "You believe more attacks will come?" "I don't believe," he said quietly. "I know. The..." Next day, news arrived from the Imperial Intelligence Network. A pirate flagship, much larger than any encountered before, had been spotted moving toward the Dareth Nebula. It was escorted by several smaller warships. The High Council debated whether to send a large fleet to intercept. Ethan listened from the edge of the chamber, his arms crossed. "You're falling into their plan," he finally said. Viel, the crown prince, turned to him sharply. "Explain." "They want the main fleet chasing them into the nebula. Once you're inside, your sensors are blind. They'll strike from hiding and cripple the ships before you know where the attacks are coming from." The council murmured, "Among themselves." Viel frowned. "What would you suggest instead?" Ethan stepped forward. "Send the fleet as bait, but keep them just outside the nebula's edge. Then I'll take a small team inside to locate their real base of operations. If we destroy their command ship, the rest will scatter." The counselors exchanged doubtful looks. "You?" one of them asked. "Why would a human mechanic think he can infiltrate a pirate stronghold?" Ethan's voice was calm but firm. "Because I've done it before." Viel hesitated, but Leora spoke up. "He's been right every time so far. Let him try." After a moment, the prince gave a short nod. "Very well. You'll have a small stealth craft and 3 volunteers." Hours later, Ethan boarded the sleek, black shuttle Shadow Wing. The 3 Shalvaran crew assigned to him, a pilot named Kieran, an engineer called Ravik, and a security officer named Tareth, watched him curiously. "You've flown in a nebula before?" Kieran asked. "A few," Ethan said, strapping himself into the co-pilot seat. The trick is to think like the people who hide there. The Shadow Wing slipped from the capital's docking bay and vanished into the stars. The Dareth Nebula loomed ahead like a storm made of fire and mist. Red and gold clouds swirled in slow, endless motion. Electrical storms flashed deep inside, illuminating shadowy shapes of drifting asteroids. As they entered, Ethan studied the sensor readings. "Keep to the magnetic currents," he told Kieran. "They'll mask our engine trail." The pilot followed his instructions, weaving the craft through narrow corridors between clouds. Twice, they passed dangerously close to pirate patrol ships, their dark hulls barely visible in the swirling gases. "Hold steady," Ethan whispered each time, guiding them through gaps in the storms. Finally, they spotted it, a massive pirate, base built into the side of a shattered moon. Docks for dozens of ships jutted out from the rock. The flagship, a hulking black vessel bristling with weapons, rested at the largest berth. Ravik's eyes widened. That ship could destroy a small fleet. "Not if it can't leave the dock," Ethan said. "Ravik, can you trigger an overload in their reactor from here?" "Not without getting closer," the engineer replied. "Then we get closer," Ethan decided. Using the cover of the nebula storms, the Shadow Wing crept toward the moon's surface. Ethan studied the base layout carefully. He spotted an unguarded maintenance port halfway along the rock face. "That's our way in," he said. They docked quietly, and Ethan led the way inside. The corridors were dim and smelled of machine oil. The distant hum of engines vibrated through the metal floor. "Stay close and stay quiet," Ethan told them. They reached the main reactor control room without raising an alarm. Ravik immediately began working at the console, fingers flying over the alien controls. "I can overload it," Ravik said, "but the blast radius will destroy anything within 2 kilometers. We need to be gone before that happens." Ethan nodded. "Set a 10-minute timer. That's enough to get clear if we move fast." As the countdown began, a sudden shout echoed from the corridor. Pirate guards burst into the room, weapons raised. Tareth stepped forward, blocking the shots with his energy shield while Ethan grabbed a heavy pipe from the wall. With quick, precise movements, he struck the nearest guard, disarming him, then used the weapon to stun the second. Kieran stared at him in surprise. "You fight like—" "Later," Ethan said. "Move!" They ran through the twisting halls, alarms blaring now. Red lights flashed overhead. Through the viewports, the crew could see pirate ships beginning to lift from their docks. Ethan guided them down an alternate maintenance shaft that led straight back to the Shadow Wing. They boarded and lifted off just as the first shockwave tore through the base. Behind them, the pirate flagship erupted in a cloud of fire and debris. The smaller ships scattered, leaderless and disorganized. When they emerged from the nebula, the waiting Shalvaran fleet moved in quickly to mop up the remaining pirate forces. The battle was short. Without their command ship, the pirates had no chance. Back at the capital, Ethan and his team were greeted as heroes. Even Vael gave him a respectful nod. "You took a great risk," the prince said, "and it paid off. I misjudged you, human." Ethan only replied, "I'm not here for glory. I'm here to keep my wife safe." That night, Leora met him in the quiet palace garden. The soft glow of the night flowers lit their faces. "You led a mission into enemy territory," she said, her voice mixed with pride and disbelief. "You destroyed a flagship. You saved hundreds of lives," Ethan smiled faintly. "It was just another job." She shook her head. "No, Ethan. It was more than that. You're not just my husband. You're becoming the protector of my people." Didn't answer right away. He just looked up at the stars and wondered how long it would be before the next storm arrived. The palace was quiet that morning, but Princess Leora could feel the weight of unspoken questions between her and Ethan. The events of the last weeks had changed everything. Her husband was no longer the simple mechanic she had once thought he was. He was a man with secrets, skills that had saved her people and her home. She found him in the private study, sitting by a large window overlooking the city. The soft sunlight made his face calm and serious. "Ethan," she began gently, "I need to know everything. Who are you really?" He looked at her for a moment, then nodded. "You deserve to know." Ethan began to tell the story he had kept, hidden for years. Before coming to Tereth 4, he had been part of a secret human program called the Sentinel Project. It was a covert group tasked with studying alien tactics, security, and defense. "We were trained to think differently," Ethan explained. "Not just as soldiers, but as problem solvers. We learned to analyze enemy movements, to predict attacks, and to find weaknesses. We worked in the shadows to keep human colonies safe before the government had to send fleets." Leora listened, amazed. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" "I wanted a quiet life," he said softly. "After years of fighting, I wanted peace. When the council offered this marriage, I thought it was a chance to leave that life behind." She reached out and took his hand. "You saved more than peace, Ethan. You saved lives. You helped us believe humans can be more than we expected." News soon arrived that the pirate threat was not over. A new enemy had been discovered, a shadowy organization called the Veil, working from the outer systems. They were supplying weapons and technology to the pirates, planning a larger attack to overthrow the Shalvaran Empire. The High Council called an emergency meeting. Ethan, Leora, and Vielle attended. Vielle looked grim. "The Veil is more dangerous than we thought. Their reach spreads beyond pirates. They have agents inside our own government." Ethan frowned. "Then we need to act fast. Waiting will give them time to strike." Leora turned to Ethan, feeling his strength beside her. "What can we do?" He met her gaze. "We must unite. Use both human and Shalvaran skills, intelligence, technology, and trust." Vielle nodded slowly. "Then we form a new task force. You will lead it, Ethan." The room went silent. All eyes on the human mechanic turned warrior. Ethan swallowed, then said, "I accept, but I will need support, from your best agents and from my human contacts." In the days that followed, Ethan worked closely with Shalvaran intelligence officers and human specialists. He helped build new strategies to find the Veil's bases and cut off their supply lines. Leora watched as her husband grew into a leader. His quiet confidence inspired those around him. One evening, she joined him in the war room, where a large star map displayed flashing red signals. "We've discovered a Veil base on the edge of the Tarnus system," Ethan said. "It's heavily guarded but vulnerable from above. A precise strike could destroy their main operation." Leora smiled. "Then let's make sure it happens." The plan was daring. A small fleet would strike quickly and silently, destroying the base before the Veil could react. Ethan led the mission personally, flying with a team of elite pilots and soldiers. The operation was tense, with moments of near disaster. But thanks to Ethan's careful planning and cool head, the attack succeeded. The base exploded in a fireball that lit the darkness of space. The Veil suffered a major blow. Back on Viralia, celebrations were muted but sincere. The people knew the fight was not over, but they had hope. Leora stood beside Ethan as the crowd cheered. For the first time, she saw him not just as her husband, but as a hero. She whispered, "You've changed everything, Ethan." He smiled softly. "I'm still the same man, just one who knows what he must do." Later, alone in their chambers, Leora looked at Ethan with new eyes. "You are not average," she said. "You are extraordinary." He took her hand and held it gently. "And I have you beside me. Together we will face whatever comes next." Outside, the stars shone brightly. The battle was far from over, but with Ethan and Leora united, the future held promise. The morning sun rose slowly over the shining towers of Viralia, the capital of the Shalvaran Empire. The air was filled with hope and cautious excitement. The recent victories against the pirates and the secret enemy, the Veil, had brought the two great cultures, human and Shalvaran, closer than ever before. In the Grand Command Center of the Imperial Fleet Station, Princess Leora stood beside her husband, Ethan Cole. The room buzzed with activity as officers and crew prepared the newly formed Joint Fleet for its first official mission under their combined leadership. Ethan, once seen as an ordinary mechanic from a quiet colony, now held the respect of many. His quiet confidence and sharp mind had helped shape this new alliance. He wore a simple uniform, but his eyes shone with determination. "Are you ready?" Leora asked softly, her hand resting on his arm. Ethan smiled. "As ready as I'll ever be." The mission was clear: to patrol the border systems and protect against any remaining threats from the Veil or other hostile forces. But it was more than that. It was a symbol of unity, a promise that humans and Shalvaran could stand together. As the fleet gathered, Ethan took his place on the command bridge of the flagship Unity, a sleek vessel combining the best technology from both species. He studied the star charts and status reports carefully. "Our strength lies not just in firepower," he said to the assembled commanders, "but in trust and teamwork. We watch each other's backs. We think like one mind." Leora watched him, proud and amazed. The man she had once thought ordinary had become a beacon of hope. The fleet left orbit smoothly, engines glowing softly as they slipped into deep space. Communications between ships were clear and confident, a sign of their new cooperation. Days passed, filled with drills and training exercises. Ethan worked closely with the Shalvaran officers, sharing human tactics while learning alien strategies. The exchange of knowledge was rich and exciting. One evening, during a break, Leora found Ethan in the observation lounge, gazing out at the stars. "Do you ever miss your quiet life on Terrath 4? She asked. He chuckled. "Sometimes. But this feels like where I belong now, with you and with all of them." Suddenly, the sensors aboard Unity picked up an anomaly, a fast-moving vessel approaching at high speed. The alarms sounded softly but urgently. "Unknown ship closing fast," reported the sensor officer. "No identification signals." Ethan stood, alert and calm. "Raise shields and prepare for contact. Signal them on all channels." The alien ship slowed, then sent a brief message. A distress call. "Pirates?" Leora asked. Ethan shook his head. "No, this is someone who needs help." The ship docked with Unity and a small team arrived, human and alien crew together. They brought urgent news. "There's a hidden Veil base near the Sarathis cluster," the leader said. "They are planning a large attack. We need help." Ethan listened carefully. "We will act together." He turned to Leora. "This is our test. Can we stand as one?" She nodded. "We will." Plans were made quickly. The Joint Fleet would move to strike the Veil base before their forces could gather. Ethan coordinated strategy meetings, blending human innovation with Shalvaran tradition. On the day of the mission, Ethan stood on the bridge, feeling the weight of responsibility. He thought back to when he was just a simple mechanic. Now, he led a fleet united by trust and purpose. The fleet moved out, stars streaking past as they jumped into hyperspace. The battle was fierce but brief. The combined forces overwhelmed the Veil's defenses. Ethan's careful planning and Leora's inspiring leadership guided the fleet to victory. When the dust settled, the Veil's threat was broken. The border systems were safe once more. Back at the capital, a ceremony celebrated the new era. Ethan and Leora stood together as leaders of a brighter future. Leora spoke to the crowd. "Today, we prove that strength lies in unity. Humans and Shalvaran, together, we are stronger than any threat." Ethan added, "And no matter how ordinary we may seem, Inside each of us is the power to change the universe. That night, as stars twinkled overhead, Ethan and Leora looked to the future, side by side, ready for whatever came next. Their story had begun with doubt and surprise. But now, it was a story of hope, courage, and the unstoppable spirit of humanity.